3, 2, 1. We are live. And by live, I mean we're pre-recording. Alderman Raymond Lopez, thank you so much for doing this. This is wonderful. I saw you on a news segment the other night at the airport, specifically talking about one of the problems we're having here in Chicago, amongst many of them. Homelessness was the news segment, was the packet, and I was really struck that I've not actually seen anybody talking about this at a political level. I live in Chicago. I'm in River North. I know a lot of the bridges. We've got these bright orange ice fishing tents that have been handed out by a Good Samaritan. Those tents are, I think his heart's in the right place, but really if our heart's in the right place, we shouldn't let people live on the street. We should help them get off of the streets. And so we've seen this problem get a lot worse. And the last time I flew out to Houston a couple weeks ago, I was in the airport, and I did get back late at night, and I noticed quite a bit of homeless people in the airport, which I thought was rather strange. And then a couple, I don't even know, maybe 2 weeks later, I saw you on a news packet talking about this very thing. And it just struck me as I reached out to you guys and I was like, hey, can we please talk about this nature of what's happening in Chicago? Again, I live in downtown. I love the city. What's happening is heartbreaking. I'd like to be able to fix it. I think it's as a result of the dereliction of a single person who's been running the city, named Mayor Lightfoot, Lori Lightfoot. As well as some of the policies of our district attorney, Kim Foxx, which have been horrible on crime. We've seen a massive increase, carjackings, shootings, and then some of the policies that they're getting behind when people are pressing them for answers. Lightfoot's most recent response, Mayor Lightfoot said, well, if you don't want to get robbed, don't carry cash on you, which is like the equivalent of saying, like, well, what was she wearing when she walked down the alley at night? Like, it's absurd. It's absolutely ridiculous. This has to be fixed. This dereliction of duty has gotten so bad that people like myself who love the city are looking to leave. My place is on the market for this exact reason, and I don't want to leave this city. It's fucking heartbreaking. So I wanted to talk with you specifically about the homeless, specifically about the crime. You're in Ward 14, correct? And maybe get a little bit more information about you as well. So again, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy man. Over to you first. Do you want to talk about homelessness, crime? Where do you want to start this conversation? Dealer's choice, sir.
Well, first off, I'm the alderman of the 15th Ward on the southwest side. So we are about 10 miles away from each other from the River North where you live, Reed. But in those 10 miles, all points in between, as you started this conversation, everything that I bring forward on a national level is because locally our politicians have their heads up their ass trying to avoid what's going on the street, plain and simple. Whether it's the homelessness that are taking over our airports, whether it's the crime on the corners, whether it's our vendors being attacked daily, whether it's the fact that we have over 400,000 911 calls went unanswered last year, and the fact that crime and violence are up nearly 41% this year over last year. You don't see politicians, you don't see the mayor, Kim Foxx, or others standing up and saying what they need to say to hold criminals accountable in this city, in this county, or in this state for that matter. All we continue to do is enable criminality, make excuses for them, and treat them as though the criminals are the victims of an unjust society as opposed to the victims being the true victims of criminality. And we continuously see where they would rather shoot the messenger, as was the case with the homeless story, than actually deal with the issue that's being brought to light. In this case, last week, I went on national news and made headlines for a week about the fact that every night for the past month or so, 200 to 300 homeless individuals, many of whom have mental illness, are descending upon the airports. They are making encampments at O'Hare specifically because after riding the Blue Line all day, they get off and they put their head down to rest there. That is not a viable solution. And it's particularly horrendous when you consider the fact that the airport is one of the major drivers of our economy, and what greets people is the wave of homelessness, disenfranchisement, and the odors of urine and feces in every hallway.
Yes.
Because that's what's going on there. And so many progressives, so many left politicians, and even our own mayor were so outraged that I said it on Tucker Carlson's show that she went to say, well, look at the source. No, Mayor, look at the problem.
Yeah.
Open your damn eyes and see what's going on here. You have hundreds of people who need help. You've gotten $60 million this year alone from HUD to address homelessness, and you haven't spent $1 of that or of the $35 million you committed the last year or the year before that to address this.
You said
All the
60
while-
million?
Oh, yeah. February, 2 weeks ago, she got $60 million from HUD for emergency vouchers to put people in homes who are experiencing homelessness. I could think of 300 individuals who fit that bill right now, who, if the mayor were to decide to go to O'Hare and put them all in a room somewhere, she could do it. But she chose not to. And I think that's the crux of the problems that we have in this city, is that politicians are making all the wrong choices. They are refusing to do what they need to do to address solutions just so that they could keep playing their games on people, forcing individuals like yourself to find a new home elsewhere, to no longer feel welcome in their own city, and to question whether or not we're the crazy ones when we see what's going on in our city with criminals being given carte blanche to do whatever they want on our street corners.
Yeah, and you know what? You're not the only person that's fallen victim to her nonsense. I know Joe Perillo, Joe Perillo, to bring you into this if you don't want to be, but you know, he has a really nice exotic car showroom, BMW showroom in downtown. It's a great place to get a car if you're looking for one in Chicago. And he had a watch display in the front of one of the exotic car showrooms. Guys walked in with hammers, smashed the glass, took the watches, and left. And there was no repercussion. And so he got on Twitter and is like, what is happening to my city that this is a thing that's allowable? This is crazy. And the response to that was that she showed up at his showroom, yelled at him in person, yelled at him in public, left. And then the next day, a city inspector showed up and he got dinged for, they serve wine there when you're buying whatever, if you're looking at a nice car. And apparently there was, I guess, with a nozzle where the wine comes out was a health code violation. Just the dumbest shit ever.
Rather than say that was coincidental.
Right. It's like, no connection there whatsoever. And again, it's like, this is where I think, this concept of like, don't trust your lying eyes. Don't believe it. It's not the problem. And really the problem was, Alderman Lopez going on the news and talking about the problem, not actually solving the problem. And I don't understand what's happening. And the politics, the left and right politics, I have no interest in either. It's silly. We have a major problem here. It's gotten worse. And I think the team's shit has gotten a lot, is an undue amount of attention. We spend so much time trying to figure out how we can win that the problems that we actually have aren't getting solved, which is the whole purpose of this show. Is like dogma unwelcome. That's our tagline for a reason. And I think as the $60 million you talked about, like, where's that money going to go? What's going to happen to that? You said $35 million the year before. Did any of that get spent? This is so frustrating. And again, as a taxpayer, as somebody who lives in the city and somebody who loves the city, I'm so frustrated that I feel like I have to leave because criminals and like this homelessness situation that's so out of control, those individuals are given top billing and top thought over any decision coming out that should be impacting the people that are paying for this city. And we're second-class citizens to criminals. Like, that's bananas. That's crazy.
It's the most asinine policy that we've ever seen. And you're right. Left, right, whatever, Republican, Democrat. In Chicago, none of that matters because we've always been the city that just focuses on getting the job done. And we've seen over the last 3 years or so a genuine tilt to try to become more like the national politics where you become unable to move because you're so busy trying to push your agenda, push your narrative, push your politics, that you forget about the solutions. Mm-hmm. The case in point, when you're talking about homeless prevention in 2020, during the pandemic, there was a $35 million push using federal CARES dollars to end homelessness in the city of Chicago. Where'd that money go? We've had nearly $2 billion more come to the city of Chicago since to address issues like homelessness and other things for the city to help get through the pandemic. Where'd that money go? A third of it went to paying off debt as opposed to helping solve some of the problems that we've seen because of COVID and the shutdown. A waste of strategy. And now here you are again, just 2 weeks ago, $60 million more from the federal government for homelessness. And where's that? Odds are it's probably following the same pattern we see out of this administration, which is you commit to a headline and you do not follow through on execution. We've seen that with violence prevention, as a matter of fact, where the mayor made this grand hoopla over $85 million for violence prevention funds to help break the cycle of violence in our communities, and then only spent about 5.5% of it.
Awesome.
What happened to the other 80 million that's just sitting in the bank? You can't play with people's lives, giving them hope, and then use the money that you earmark for them for your cash management problems. And that's what we see time and time again. And because of where we're at in terms of our politics and a lot of the racial bullshit going on in the city, the moment you criticize the mayor or anyone in her administration, you're accused of being misogynistic, homophobic, racist, you name it, when you're really just trying to find out, hey, I come from a community of color. I represent African Americans and Latinos in my ward. We get along great, but we have issues that we have to address as a city for my folks and for them at large as a whole. And if you're going to tell them that you're going to help them, then you better damn well do it.
Yeah.
And stop pretending like you are while doing some other kind of narrative for other people whom you seem to be serving more so than the ones that you keep pawning as the one that you're trying to help.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's so frustrating. It's just like the political platitudes and the talking points. Like, we care about black and brown communities. We care so much about getting people out of poverty and creating economic ladders. It's all that
transparency and equity.
Yeah, it's all this stuff. It's like it's so goddamn meaningless at this point because no one's doing anything to fix it. And if you want an example of how bad this gets with these stupid talking points, look at what happened with Sam Bankman-Fried in the FTX scandal. That guy said all the things. We care about climate. We care about equity. We care about inclusion. All the things. And it was just a gigantic Ponzi scheme. It's absolutely insane. And there's just so many people that are like me that are frustrated. And again, like, we don't want talking points. We want action. And I really am. I've gotten to a place, and like I said, it breaks my heart, man. Like, I love the city. I came back here in 2011. I wanted to do an indie film thing here in Chicago, and I did. I made my first movie here, my first indie film here with my buddy Mike. Like, that was amazing. And since then, the city has just been in steady decline. And it's like, I would love to stay here and continue to do this stuff, and I can't because I don't see an economic path forward. And a lot of the other people we worked with have gone. They're not here anymore. So what am I supposed to do? Do I just keep sticking it out in hopes that, Mayor Lightfoot doesn't get reelected? And which is why I wanted to talk to you. It's like, how can I help get the word out, and what can we do to get her out of office and have some accountability for Kim Foxx, who's like completely ransacked the city and has, in her policies of trying to prevent kids from getting into gangs, has activated all of the sub-18-year-old members of gangs and increased probably gang activity and their numbers, because they know if they're under the age of 18, if you're robbing somebody in Cook County or breaking the law, you're not going to go to jail. Or if you do get arrested, you get let out in an hour, which is why we've seen a rash of crime. So it's like, how do we fix this, man? I don't want this to just be about problems. I want this to be about solutions as well. And I think you are a huge part of that solution, and maybe others that are in the same boat as you politically that can hopefully push her out of office. Like, who are we supposed to be looking to for a guiding light here?
Well, I think what you need to ask all our voters is, are we going to fall for the same, rope-a-dope games that we've seen in the past? We thought Kim Foxx wasn't going to be reelected, and she was, despite all of her errors and despite all of her bullshit politics and agenda-driven legalese that she does out of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, transforming that office into the best public defender's office this country's ever seen. But she was reelected because she played on people's emotions, she played on their racial fears, and I have no doubt that if Lori Lightfoot is in the runoff after next Tuesday, she will follow the same exact pattern because it has worked for one politician, and she'll hope to replicate that again despite all of her failures. Voters of every stripe, color, creed, orientation, you name it, are united under one thing. Nobody feels safe anymore in the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
This city has lost its luster, unfortunately, and it pains me to say that as one of the 50 people who are elected to push this city forward. It pains me to say that. As someone born and bred on the Southwest Side, it hurts to know that so many people don't love this city anymore. How do you move forward from that? We have to shirk all the nonsense, cut all the bullshit, and just finally focus on what matters, which is our neighborhoods, our family, and our children. And if you could put them first and look at who is going to address the issues that are most negatively impacting them and their potential future successes, That's how we have to vote. We can't just vote for people because they look like us or vote for them because they have the same sexual orientation as us. That bullshit has come and it has failed miserably in the city of Chicago. Identity politics is what brought us to this point, and it's great to have pride in your fellow people, but if they don't serve you, you got to let them go.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a Latino mayor. That'd be great. But I know who's running for mayor who's a Latino, and there's no way in hell I'd ever vote for him.
God.
I've seen what he does.
Yeah.
I've seen what he's done to his community. I've seen what he does in his own household. No way. I want the person who's going to look at my family, my community, my neighborhood, and love it just as much as I do. And I think there's only a handful of people in this race who are firm believers in that. I think, obviously I'm supporting Willie Wilson. I think Paul Vallis and he both share my same concern about law and order without having to defund the police like some of the other candidates are espousing right now.
I don't understand that concept. It's so insane, and it was insane when it happened. I get the overcorrection, but it's like, why are people still doubling down on that? And I'm a United States Marine and a combat veteran. I was served overseas in the Middle East in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Okay, hoorah, 100%. Don't let the beard and the long hair fool you. I have lived in lawless societies. And when I say lawless, I mean we were the police force in a lawless society where government had completely collapsed. I can tell you firsthand, it ain't great. It's not. It's horrible. It's murders, rapes, people ransacking, stealing, thieving. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. We need the police in our society. We need police in a huge way. Can we be doing better? 100%. 100%.
Yes,
absolutely. But the concept that you're going to have better resources against crime with fewer police doesn't make any sense. And even the logic behind this is where I struggle, where you go, well, the system's broken, so we need to have less police, and then we need to lean even harder on the system that we're said is broken after we've broken worse to fix the crime? Like, what?
And we
I don't
only
get that.
And they only cherry pick which broken system they want to completely dismantle.
Right.
Because by their same token, we should be dismantling public education when you only have 26% of your students able to read.
Yeah, that was another. Oh God, I saw it the other night, and
or 24% who know how to do math.
Yeah.
But no one's saying dismantle public education because the teachers have failed. But you have situations where, and look, we have to take stock of what our police do here in Chicago. Period.
Mm-hmm.
I think social media has magnified issues when it comes to police violence, where all cops are portrayed as bad, regardless because of what's going on in this state or that state. It's automatically labeled and heaped onto what our officers are doing here.
Yeah.
We know we have issues here, and as long as we're working to correct them here, I can only be focused, and we can only focus on what's going on in the city of Chicago.
Yep.
We can make ourselves the model or beacon for other departments, but we can't always be held accountable for what people in other states are doing on our officers. And we see politicians try to navigate that because it's always easier to point the fingers at police than it is to point the fingers at those known magnets of violence, those gang families, those drug dealers who we know on every single block. It's easier to point at the police than it is to call them out and hold them accountable because you're afraid of their parents being upset with you for calling their little mijo a drug dealer or for saying that Johnny over there is a gang member. We have to call a spade, and if the cops are wrong, so be it. But by the same token, if people in our neighborhood are wrong, we got to call them out for it too.
Yeah.
And most politicians I see are too afraid to do that.
That's just so strange to me, man. I sincerely
Pandering at its best.
Yeah, that is the case. I mean, it really is. There's a narrative that gets talked about, and people glom onto whatever the narrative is, and they say all the things, but there's very little follow up and there's very little action. I sincerely appreciate you coming on and making time for this. How do people get involved outside of just? Is it contacting your office? Is it supporting the candidates that you support? I mean, what's the best way outside of stuff like this where we just spread the word? Social media can be such a damaging thing, as you mentioned, with how the police are portrayed, but it can also help get messages like this out into the world, which I'm hoping to do. So is it just a matter of sharing these types of interviews and getting the word out, or is there more that we can be doing to help you in your campaign and hopefully oust somebody like Mayor Lightfoot?
Well, I think our goal has to be to provide platforms for individuals who are like-minded, like myself, for other candidates like those that we support across the city council and for the mayor's races, to be able to come onto your show and speak, just because you're the loudest, craziest voice doesn't mean you're right. And we see that so often in politics, where the crazies are the louder ones who are, an inch deep and a mile wide when it comes to their support. We need people who have roots in communities, who have common sense, and who understand what's going on. And I, to be honest, Reed, I am thankful that I'm on your show to share this message, because we have to give hope to the masses who aren't towing the line of the crazy.
Yeah.
Who believe in common sense but don't get to see the voices, because every time someone speaks up about common sense things, they're ostracized or marginalized or canceled. The great thing about me is, thanks to social media, I'm much more of a difficult target to cancel by some of these crazies. But I've seen where individuals running for office, or even office holders already, have tried to stand up, and then they get weak-kneed moment. The traveling hordes show up to yell at them and tell them to get back in line. My line is the line that belongs with the community, with the people. And my grandmother raised me to know that in Chicago we smell BS a mile away. And I've stuck with that for as long as I've been on this earth. You have to just say what you mean and do what you say, and you'll go far, and candidates will be wise to pay attention to that. You could try to pander, and I think that will get you so far, but people will see through that eventually, especially when shit hits the fan, as it always tends to in the city of Chicago.
Well,
but
you can only
be here and stand up and stand on 2 feet and push back, and have outlets and sources that promote that as well, because there sure are plenty that don't, is a great place to be as well.
Well, again, thank you so much for making time. Alderman Raymond Lopez from 15th Ward, correct? How do we reach out to you on social media if people do want to? What are your handles?
Follow me on Twitter, rlopez 15th Ward. You can visit me on Facebook. Don't ask me what those are. or online. My campaign is with ray2023.com. But either way, I'm always out there, happy to talk, happy to engage, and I may not be your alderman, but I'm happy to be everyone's second favorite alderman.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Alderman Lopez. I sincerely appreciate you making time. Guys, get involved. I'll share some information in the description so you can reach out to him directly, even if if it's not the right alderman. It doesn't matter. Get involved. Use these types of things. Spread the word. Have honest conversations and pursue the truth. That's all I can ever ask for. This is like the great centralization project for me. It's like the people have been split up and decentralized. Yep. That's what all this race baiting crap is that I can't stand. We are so divided unnecessarily, and we have so much in common, and you wouldn't know it because all we do is focus on everything that we have apart. So if I could help with anything, it's the great centralization movement to get us to start to to gather en masse to demand more of our politicians that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So thank you again so much for making time to do this. I sincerely appreciate it. We'll post it online, and I'll share that link with your office afterwards. And thank you guys for listening or watching. We sincerely appreciate it. We'll see you guys on the internet.